Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary Cundiff Brown,
And I'm Jonathan Brown.
and together we own Monarch Photography LLC and Boudoir Glam by Monarch here in Louisville, Kentucky. I also am the co-chair for the print committee for the Photo Pro Network and the 2014 Photo Pro Expo, along with our current president, Jennifer McCarty Palumbo, and we wanted to do a video tutorial for you today for those of you who are interested in entering print competition and are a little bit confused or a little bit stressed out about how to prepare your images for print competition coming up in February. This is a wonderful opportunity for you to get started in print competition and also to advance to the PPA International Print Competition. It makes you a wonderful, just a wonderful image maker, and also helps your clients as you further your skill set and your craft. So we wanted to mainly talk about today how to create the proper size image, the keystroke, and the matte. All of those come together to make a proper image submittable for print competition. And all of the rules and regulations are on both the Photo Pro Network website as well as the Photo Pro Expo website. Please make sure you go through each and every one of those rules. They're very, very specific, and we need to go into all of those details to be able to help you submit your images. If you have any questions, you can always submit an email to either Jennifer or myself through our personal websites, but mostly through the Photo Pro Network website. Our emails and phone numbers are also listed under the print competition rules. So Jonathan is going to go through in just a moment and show you how to properly matte your image, size your image, and also to put a keystroke that enhances the quality and the appearance of your image. If you haven't done so already, please make sure that you go to the Photo Pro Network and Photo Pro Expo sites so that you can see the prior online tutorials that we have posted for you. One of them is by master photographer Dave Huntsman, and he goes over the 12 elements of a merit image. Basically, those 12 elements all work together to create a wonderful, high-quality image that the jury panel is sure to love. Those things are such as composition and your lighting and your impact and your storytelling, and all of those things come together to give you a quality merit image. We also have online tutorials that will show a little bit about keystroke and just how to properly choose your images. So make sure you go to our website. Once again, either both the Photo Pro or Photo Pro Expo websites, and all of those will be listed. Just to get started with the image before we start on this, we also wanted to remind you about the size. If you go to the rules under print competition, it will tell you that all prints need to be mounted on mount board or foam core board. And I'll go over a little bit of about that in just a second. But as far as the size, the image itself may be no less than 80 square inches or a maximum of 480 square inches, with the longest dimension no longer than 24 inches. So a 16 by 20 print is ideal. You can certainly do other sizes, but 16 by 20 tends to be the standard. And you also, when you mount your images on your foam core or onto your mount board, it needs to be no less than 1/8 of an inch thick and no more than 3/8 of an inch thick. If they don't go into that size area, then we cannot hang them in our display, and we certainly want to be able to hang your images in the display for everyone at Photo Pro Expo to be able to see and enjoy. So now Jonathan is going to show you, this is one of his lone image prints from the International Print Competition of PPA, and he's going to show you how to matte and to keystroke and size your image properly.
All right, I want to start off with kind of the end result first. You kind of see what we're doing when we talk about it. When we say matte, this is the matte we're talking about. You see the image here and the matte background with the stroke around the edges. So I'm going to kind of show you how we got that started with a straight image. Let's go to kind of get rid of the matte here. Go to straight image. The first thing you want to do is go ahead and make another layer. So then you have your background, which is the image, and layer 1. Then what you want to do is put your cursor over background, hold down your Alt key, and double click. What that does is that makes that background layer an actual layer now. Because if it's still background, you wouldn't be able to move it around like that. And what you want to do is you want to have your empty background layer, your empty layer on the bottom now with your image on top of it. And then what you want to do is simply hold down Control, hit T to go into Free Transform. You can do the same thing by going to Image, Transform, Free Transform. Or actually, Layer Transform. But Control T is a quicker way of getting there. So once you're there, hold down the Shift key. and make your image a little smaller. That way you see your background. Make it a little smaller, move it in. Now that way you have your image on top of your blank background. Go and select that. Now the next thing you want to do is go ahead and make that background whatever color you want. The best way to do that, probably the easiest way, is go and select your color bucket, your paint bucket tool, then go ahead and select your foreground color. Now here's a couple of options. You need to decide what you want to do. Your background color should go along with the image and not fight the image and be...
It does need to be a shade or a tone out of the image. For instance, it would look completely different if we chose a white matte as opposed to a darker matte. And when you decide to title your images and you're going for the impact of your images, that certainly this matte is going to come into play with that. So, for instance, if we did a white background,
I'll show you how that looks. What you do is select white, hit OK. You have your paint bucket tool selected. You select your background layer and just simply drop that.
and you can see that really doesn't do anything to highlight the sort of autumn theme of this image that John obviously shot in the fall. So we want to play around and find something else. Now, you can't go wrong with a black background. That's absolutely fine, and that's under most circumstances. But for instance, let's see if maybe we chose something out of the orange tones for the background.
And what you do is once you move your cursor off of your color picker, see how it becomes the eyedropper. You can choose whatever and see how it becomes the new image, new color. You see as I start selecting around, I can select any color out of here I wanted to. Let's grab one of these oranges, do that, hit OK, and then let's go ahead and drop the color again. And again, a little busy, kind of fights the image itself.
Right. And you don't want it to be a case of, wow, I'm really looking at that matte as opposed to looking at the image. And that is certainly a case in this situation. So let's see what a good basic black background would look like.
And there are a couple ways to get black. What I do is just go down here to the bottom, select that, hit OK, and then drop it on there. And then there you have a nice black image, or black background. Like she said, if you had a too bright color, it would be fighting for attention. And it would just be so distracting that the judges wouldn't pay attention to your image.
You also want to make sure that you place it, if you want it in the center, make sure you're watching your sides. You can use your grid tool, all of that stuff to make sure your images are centered onto your mat. So next we can look at how to do a keystroke.
Before that, since you mentioned the grid tool, I'll show you that. Go to View, Show, and Grid, right there. What that does is just pops this grid over. That way you can count the number of squares on each side, top and bottom. I like this better than the ruler because with the ruler it's kind of hard to see where the line is. This way you have all your lines. And again, to get to that, go to View, Show, Grid to turn it on and off. A great tool. We use it all the time. Once you get to your actual placement of the image within the mat, and once you decide what size you want, that grid tool allows you to get it evenly spaced vertically and horizontally. Now, to do a stroke, what you do is come back over here to your layers, select your image layer, then go down here to Layer Styles, and select Stroke. And what you'll see is, same thing, as far as your color picker, you can select your color here, so you get your color picker here or here. And also you notice the preview. Once you start selecting your colors as something different than black, you can start seeing those colors around the edge of your image. So let's just go and pick this nice kind of fall foliage color. And then you come back here to your size. I usually like to try about a 5 or a 6. And one thing about this stroke, you can come back and adjust this at any point so you can play with it, see what you want to do with it. I usually use the outside here. Some people use inside. Or center. I usually prefer the outside. It's all kind of personal preference. Once you've been doing this for a while, you'll kind of get a personal preference to decide what you think looks better. But then go ahead and hit OK. Now you'll see under your image you have your effects and your stroke, and you can turn those on and off so you can see what it looks like without the stroke and with the stroke. And then when you zoom in, you can see exactly what the stroke is. Oops. There you go. The stroke is just simply that. It's just a stroke around the image. It just gives you separation between your image and your matte background. So now we have that stroke. Now what we want to do is show you how to make a secondary stroke. Sometimes some makers like to put a secondary stroke on an image. It's personal preference. Sometimes you want a single stroke, sometimes a double stroke. What you want to do is make another layer. And now you have 3 layers. What you want to do is make sure this new layer that's blank, so there's nothing there, is on top. because what you're going to do is you're going to put the stroke on that layer. So now go to your marquee rectangle tool, start right about here, and go all the way down there. All you're doing is simply selecting and dragging, and then let go of the mouse. And don't worry too much about size, because you can go back and resize this since we put it on a separate layer. Now what you want to do is make sure you right mouse click inside. It gives you these options. If you right mouse click outside, you don't get those options. So right mouse click inside, go to stroke, and then same thing, you have your 5 pixels, you have your inside, your center, your outside. For this, I usually use center because it's not around the edge of an image, it is just kind of a standalone second stroke. So I use center, go to color. Again, same thing, you can either use this color picker, or you can just go in here and pick something out of the image. Just to demonstrate, I'll kind of pick something kind of vibrant that's a little different. I'll use one of these greens. Then hit OK. Select out here, and that gives you your outside stroke. And that's how you have your outside stroke.
And a double stroke is really nice if the image is very, very simple, or if you're wanting to add just a little extra impact. With this image, we certainly would want to go with just the single stroke because there's so much to see already in the image, and it's so busy that we feel like a double stroke would kind of take away from it. So,
but if you wanted to use the second stroke, I wanted to show you one thing too. Hit Control-T for free transform, and then you can move this however you want. You can resize, you can move around. A trick too, whenever you're using free transform like that, if you hold down Shift, it keeps your aspect ratio. If you hold down Shift and Alt at the same time, it moves everything in equally. This I use a lot when I'm doing a second stroke and sometimes when I'm resizing an image, because that way if I want the image to be just a little bit smaller but stay in the very center of the image, this won't move it outside of the center. So it'll still keep your same ratios, horizontal and vertical, just make it smaller. And you can do that with your image as well. If you come down and select your image, do the same thing, Control-T, hold down Shift and Alt together, and then move it in. All right.
And the image itself does not have to be smack dab in the center of the mat. You can play it around a little bit if you're dealing with the rule of thirds, or you're looking to present it in some negative space, or if you're wanting a slimline image. So, you know, as long as it is within the rules of 80 square inches to 480 square inches, basically anything goes. So just think about that and play around with it. And also I wanted to remind you, the way that we do it is we have the image itself pretty much ready to go before we start doing the mat and the placement and the keystroke. You want to do all of your post-processing work on your image first, because these are the last steps that you're going to do before you finish and title your image and submit it to your lab for prints.
And one thing I wanted to mention as well, she talked about the 80-inch minimum on the image. What she's talking about is this image, not the whole image, not the print, the image on the print. What that means is what you want to do is have, if this was 16 by 20, have a very, very small image like that. You want to make sure it's big enough for the judges to see and judge appropriately, be able to see the image. All right, so we'll go ahead and leave that. Now we're going to talk about how to properly size the image for the print competition and how to save it. What I recommend you do is you save this, go to File, Save As. I'm going to put it on the desktop so I don't mess up my original image.
And we know his image is a little bit off-center, so we're just showing this for you for...
Yeah, just an example. All right, so what I do is I always recommend you save it as a PSD first. That way, you see over here you have all these layers. If you saved it just as a JPEG, you'd lose these layers and you'd lose the ability to come back and edit these later. So that means if you didn't like this stroke, you'd have to make the stroke all over again and do all this from scratch. Saves you a ton of time if you just go ahead and save it as a PSD. So let's go ahead and do that. Yes, I've already saved it because I did a dry run earlier. So now I have the PSD saved. Now what I do is go to Image, Image Size. Now the rules say the longest edge has to be 2,000 pixels. So let's say when I got here, the default is inches. Some of you might have seen inches when you first come into this screen. Just go to inches to pixels, and it shows you the pixel size. So what you do is take the longest edge, which because this is a horizontal image, the longest edge is of course your width. Make that 2,000, and then see since the chain is connected, it's locked. So it kept the same aspect ratio and made your height the appropriate size for the 2,000 width. Hit OK. Takes a second to process, and there you go. And there you have your 2,000 pixel wide image, which is exactly the size you need for print competition. Now don't resave this. It's very important. If you resave your PSD now, it's going to be the smaller 2000 pixel size instead of what your previous size was. Which, if you're going to blow this up to anything bigger, you might want to keep the original larger size instead of saving the smaller one. Now, to save the JPEG, go to File, Save As, and simply select JPEG. And then what you want to do is start putting the proper way to name the title is your name. For me, of course, Brown, and I've already done a sample here so you see what it looks like. It'll be Brown _ Appalachian _ Sunrise, because the title of this print is Appalachian Sunrise. So it's your last name, then the title of the print with underscores between each word, so for the separation, but that way the file name has no spaces.
Capitalize.
Oh, yes. Not capitalized. Okay. Appalachian Sunrise.
And I will say, when you're naming your prints, and you want to name them because when the turntable turns around with your image on it, with your print, your physical print on it, we announce the title. And that title is what gives us the idea of what to look for about that image. You know, this image could be called The Old Mill, or, you know, Babcock State Park, which is where it was shot. But we wanted to play up on the beauty of the sunrise and of the beautiful tones that the light was giving the autumn colors in this. So make sure also that you spell it correctly, because we have to go by how you have spelled it as far as how we're going to pronounce it. So that's very, very important. You can certainly name something untitled, but it's going to be a bit of a detriment to your image, to your print, because that's not going to really give that judge panel something to look for within that image when it comes around.
All right, then you just hit Save. I've already done a sample. And then when you get to this screen, make sure you have at least 10 to 12. 12 is recommended. 10 to 12 is fine, anywhere in that range. Then go ahead, OK. And there you go. You've saved your image. You've put your image on the background on the mat, put your stroke on it, and now saved it and sized it properly.
And the last thing you want to talk about is, just very, very briefly, is make sure that your lab knows that you're printing these physical prints for a print competition. Tell them that you know, you're entering the print competition and that you need these printed. They will use their discretion as far as what we call printing down for the lighting, so that the lighting is appropriate, that we set up for the print competition so the jury panel can see your images. And also they will decide what, you know, if they're going to do it on regular paper or pearl paper, and as if they're going to shellac them or put any kind of gloss or matte tone onto them. So make sure that you let your lab know that you are printing and mounting for print competition. And one more tip: if you are putting them on foam core instead of on mount board, make sure, and foam core is recommended because mount board can bow a little bit and cause the print to bend. So if you're doing a white background matte or a lighter color, then go ahead and do white foam core. If you're doing a dark tone, like this for instance, go ahead and ask them to print it on black foam core if that's available. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there with your black Sharpie and you're going to be a nervous wreck trying to darken in the edges of your print and hope you don't hit your print in the process.
As we have done.
Not that that's ever happened to most photographers. But if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to email either Jennifer or myself. Our email and phone number, contact info can be found at photopronetwork.com or also photoproexpo.com. We hope that this has helped you, and we wish you best of luck in print competition.